I was an actor in television and working as a stuntman, body double, and we had just finished filming at the studio in San Diego. So I said, well, we heard the lunch. It was time for lunch break. We all break for about 45 minutes, and I thought I would go for a jog. I took off my shirt. I was a bodybuilder at the time, so I wasn't very bashful. And I took off my shirt, and so pretty much all I'm wearing is my shorts and my tennis shoes. And I had my wallet because I wanted to cash my check. And I started down for a jog, and I was just saying, what a beautiful day. And I was looking up at the blue sky and so thankful for my life. And I just met this really nice gal. Her name's Gina Giese, and we were going to spend the weekend together and meet some of her friends. Well, we came to the corner after about half a mile of running. I came to the corner of Ruffin Road and Claremont Mesa Boulevard, which is the corner street right next to Wells Fargo. But there's two triple lanes that you have to cross to safely get to Wells Fargo. Well, my light turned green for me to take a walk across the street, which I proceeded to do. And a car pulled up with some young people on board, and they had a bunch of sodas and things on their dash, and they really weren't looking, and they pulled right into the crosswalk. So I went around them, behind them, and when I emerged on the other side, a pickup truck, a white Ford pickup truck, hit me. Going about 40 miles an hour. It was like all I saw was a flash of white, and I went over the hood, going through the windshield. My face went through the windshield, and then he continued his motion forward, which sent me flying. And witnesses at the police report said I went between like 20 and 30 feet in the air, and so I was a little bit of a rag doll. And I never lost consciousness. So as I'm flying through the air, I see myself. I leave my body, and then I'm seeing myself and the truck. I could see the pickup truck, but I'm no longer in my body, and I'm having this vision from above, looking down at my body. And then everything kind of fades to this beautiful, warm, bright white. Kind of like being inside a cloud, I guess, is how I guess I would imagine it. But it's not foggy in there. It's very clear, but it's just a very nice, soft, loving white around you. And to my right, about 6 feet away, there's what I perceived was an angel. And she was just floating there. And we're talking and we're having this conversation, but it's not with our mouths. We're having a conversation with our thoughts. And the thoughts are very, they're pretty quick, and they're honest, and they contain emotion. They color everything that you would try to express with your words. She and I were expressing with just our thoughts. And she advised me, let's turn and look. Let's look at this. So she turned and looked. So I turned and looked with her. And to my right, I started seeing these images coming in, and they were very, very vivid. Pictures of my, like, live movies with smell and emotion, and I literally was back in this particular specific moment of my life, and it started with what I remember was Christmas with my mom and dad and my brother and sister, and I'm in this movie, and I'm smiling. I could smell the pine, the tree, and I could just, it was like I was completely re-experiencing. And then these continued on, and then it was a later part of my life, and I'm playing hockey with all my neighbors on this rink. It was a frozen pond behind our house, and all the neighbors are there, and we're having fun and we're laughing. And again, it's like I'm re-experiencing this. It's so vivid. And these movies continue on, and they did, and up until the present moment, where I am with with the impact, and I'm flying out of my body, and then the movie stops, and that's where it ended. And I turned to her, and she said, "No, hold on, wait a minute. There's more." So I turned back, and then I see a little boy, and a woman playing baseball up on this ridge. To jump ahead, I ended up living on that ranch, and I ended up marrying that woman, and that little boy is my son. So she showed me my future, and I turned to her and I said, where am I? And she says, you no longer exist. And I said, well, it's not fair, because this is my life, and this is my dream, and I said, I need to be there. This is my future. And she asked me, is this your choice? That's when, like, we're looking eye to eye, and she said, is this your choice? And I said, yes, I want to be there. So the next thing I know, I'm back in my body, and I realized that I'm flying through the air. So I put my hands behind me, because I was a stuntman, and I knew that if I didn't, then I would crack my head open when I hit the pavement. So I did, and I ended up fracturing both my wrists, and my hands are still pretty messed up to today, and I've had quite a few surgeries on them. But and I do apologize for that emotion, but it's just that part of the story that I'm blessed, and because I'm here, and I married that woman. I got to have that boy, and he and I are best friends, and that she gave me the opportunity to experience something like that and still come back. I really am very blessed, and it's changed my life in so many different ways as a person, for the better. In my heart, I'm very empathetic. I spend a lot of time picking worms and frogs and things off the path, or things where people may have heard of. Anything that, and just take the moment to smell a flower and to help others. And I love talking a lot. I talk to everybody. I take walks every day, and I can't walk by somebody without saying something or commenting on the pleasantry of sharing that moment with them, and being able to be back. So the appreciation is greatly felt, and I live my dream. I live what she showed me, and I guess one of the difficulties now is that I was given a second chance at life. I'm not really sure what my future is. I pray a lot to God, and I ask, what would you like me to be, or where would you like me to go, and what would you like me to do? Because I really believe that I can make a difference, that I can help bridge the unknown people who are afraid, or people that are concerned about loved ones that have passed. And I don't want them to be misunderstanding that it's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing to, it's hard to explain it to somebody that death is not a bad thing, and to go to heaven and to have that experience, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It was like everything was in slow motion, and when I hit the ground, I stood right up. I was so elated to be alive, to be back, and to be able, like, I was alive. I'm thinking, I'm alive. And I was so excited, and being fresh from heaven, I was so full of love. I wanted to touch everybody. I wanted to hug them, and I wanted to express, like, what I felt, like the love of that light, and the angel. And there's so much that happened there. I kind of gave the Reader's Digest version, but I could give you the finite details of what I felt around me. It was like all these souls were surrounding you, and they're all hugging you, and they're all like welcoming you, like they're helping guide you to this path. When I was there, and the angel, she was like, I had known her as if she and I had been friends, and I knew, it's like I'd seen her before. It was no shock to be there and to be in her presence. And she was, like, again, semi-transparent. I looked to my right, because I'm re-experiencing what I experienced, and she was very, she was pretty, and she had flowing hair, long hair, and again, she was semi-transparent, because she wasn't of the physical. she was of a spiritual level, and I could kind of see through her. And but when I came back and when I hit the ground, there were a lot of injuries, and uh, people were telling me I could hear then cars and people screaming and horns, and people yelling like, sit down. And I I went back to his truck, which was about 15 feet away, and there was glass all over the ground. And I couldn't talk to him because the windshield was knocked out from my face. And so I went around to the side door and I leaned in and I asked him if he was okay. And he was on his phone and he was crying. And I said, "It's okay." I said, and I reached out to touch his hand, and he said, please go sit down." So I did, and I went and I sat on the curb and I looked down, and then I started saying to myself, I don't remember wearing red socks. I always wear white socks. And then I started taking an inventory, and I have a fractured spine, and I I would get glass out of my face. It would just, while I'm shaving, all of a sudden there'd be some blood, and then a piece of glass I'd find another piece of glass. This went on for about a year. I couldn't walk straight for about a year, and I never told anybody because I didn't want people to worry about me. Um, and when I sat down at the curb, I had a couple people from the studio who happened to be going to lunch, and they were peeking in the ambulance because they put me on a wooden board and they strapped me in. And I remember I had my sides from that day's filming in my pocket, and I gave them to the two ambulance drivers, the one who was riding with me, and I was trying to get my hand out because it was strapped in, and I pulled the sides out, which were the dialogue and all the words from the television show, which was a comedy that we were filming that day. And I'm handing it to him, and I said, "You've got to read these. These are so funny." And he couldn't believe that I was alert, up, and they took me to the hospital, and I guess I left a large chunk of my back somewhere on the truck. And the doctor said that they could sew me up, but I think they can't really do much about that. And they sewed up my face, and I had an artery that ripped open on my leg, and it was spurting blood. And I'm trying to think what else happened. The strange thing was that 10 days later, I had a complete healing. Within 10 days, I never sat down. I was never bedridden. I made sure that I stayed up. I didn't want to go back to the hospital. I just wanted to stay and to be there with my girlfriend Gina. And the girl that I met up the last segment that the angel showed me, I married her, and she became my wife, and she and I had that little boy. So I got to see the future that was to happen. And it was strange when we got married, and they were doing an ultrasound, and I knew that it was a boy. I asked her, and she said, would you like, the nurse asked, would you like to know the sex of the child? And Gina said, yeah. And it was Dylan, the boy. And so dreams do come true, and I got to see the future. I don't know how many people get that opportunity, but it's quite a miracle.